Okay, we're live. Woohoo! Hey guys, welcome. We have such a treat for you today. Today we are talking to Dr. Sarah Allen about her brand new book that is launching today, Raising Brains. Dr. Allen is a working mom, a pediatric neuropsychologist, a parent teacher coach, and she's on a mission to help parents raise happy brains. Who doesn't want that, right? Any parents or anybody who knows parents or anybody who knows kids knows that happy kids are, better kids, right? So as the brain gal, she teaches people how to use brain science to their advantage. How exciting is that? So, Sarah, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so
And
much.
maybe you can just quickly tell me a little bit about your background and, how you got into pediatric neuropsychology and all of that.
Yeah. So I've always found the brain fascinating. I just find the fact that, my mother used to say it's not reality, it's perception. And it's so true when it comes to brain science and the way the brain works, because really reality is just the way your brain is perceiving things. So I kind of got into things from there. I started in adult work and then went to kids, mostly because they're more changeable. Adults are kind of set in their ways and kids' brains can really be molded. And, between that and having my own kids, I just realized the amazing opportunity that we have as parents and as teachers and as anybody around kids, coaches, anything like that, art teachers, everything, to really be able to impact the way our kids' brains develop. And it will help make them these wonderful, connected, successful beings that can really create in the world and give back to the world in this amazing way.
Wow. So, what led you to write this particular book?
Yeah. So, as everyone got kind of shut down in the pandemic, a lot of my schoolwork closed down. So I do a lot of consulting for schools and helping them build up healthy brain programs in their schools and also help to create environments for students where they can really thrive depending on their brain patterns. And that work slowed down. And it just gave me this incredible opportunity to think through personally, a lot of things I had been through throughout the last 5 or 10 years. And then professionally, where else I could contribute. I'd been doing this for so long. I never kind of stopped and looked around. And I realized I had done this parent coaching and started to kind of build it up before the pandemic. And I realized my heart was really in helping people raise these brains, these little brains. You might call them kids. I call them little brains. It's perspective, but it was really helpful, and all of the people I was consulting with really benefited from it. And I leaned back on those the things that I learned from my brain science background, and I have over 15 plus years in studying the brain, and really realized how valuable this program, this plan, having a plan was to raising little brains. And so I was able to finally put it down on paper. I'd written tons of blogs before. I kind of pulled everything together and really got one plan together to really help families really understand how to create a plan to raise kids. I mean, it's crazy, right? We get a license to drive a car, and then you have a kid and they're just like, here you go, you can take this kid home.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, my oldest is now 20, but I remember when I had him, and they only give you 48 hours in the hospital if you have a normal birth, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the 48 hours, they're like, so do you have a car seat? Okay, there's your baby, bye-bye. And you're like, wait, you're going to let me take this thing? Like, you're going to let me leave with this thing? Like, I don't know what to do with it. It's fragile. It can break.
Right. And there's a lot of early books, and they were so helpful to me, feeding and sleeping and all of those kinds of things. And then they get a little bit older, and, there's some books about how to manage behavior, but I really dislike that term, because when you have your own kids, you realize it's not about managing them. It's about trying to raise these good humans. And, figuring out how to do that is so difficult. And this plan just really helped me and my kids, and it's helped so many of my families. I just felt like I had to put it out there.
So what are you hoping that people are going to get out of reading the book?
I hope people are going to get confidence. I hope parents feel more empowered. I hope teachers can read this book, and coaches, as I said before, and anyone who comes into contact with kids, grandparents, realize kind of how much value they have in these kids' lives and how much of an impact they can have in terms of actually connecting the cells in the brain and really putting things together for these kids and realizing that they can put the next generation out there and they get that impact to have. And what an amazing thing. So I really hope that parents reading this, teachers reading this, support people, I call it the dream team in the book, reading this, really have a really good understanding of they can build this confidence. I just said this to someone this morning, actually, that when I teach some doctor and master's level classes, and I'm always trying to teach how to think, not actual content, although there of course is content. So I really hope they walk away with seeing a different way of how to think about parenting.
So without giving too many spoilers, can you maybe give us a tip or two?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is about realizing that your kids are little brains. I know that sounds crazy, but really thinking about what they need and what's happening with them. And kids often speak with their behavior. So we're really not looking at the delivery, we're looking at the message. And so if you can start really asking questions, what do you need right now? What can I teach this little brain? What does this little brain need to learn? Those are the two key questions I talk about early on in the book. And it changes the way you start to see your kids. The behavior doesn't become about you anymore. It's not about them acting out. It's about thinking about what's happening in that brain. Again, the message, not the delivery.
Interesting. So when you're talking about mindful meddling, that's kind of what you mean is, asking these type of questions. And
yes, mindful meddling is one of my favorite terms because I'm a meddler by nature. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what, but I really want people in my life to be happy and connected, and I would love to do whatever I could to support that. And I've learned over the years that you have to be mindful about the way that you meddle. And in this case, it's about helping to guide, but not smothering your kids. Stepping back and realizing, hey, what goals do my kids have? And we talk about this in the book, a plan and how to create these kind of goals for your kids to know what your kids' brains need. So once you have those goals, it becomes a lot easier to mindfully meddle because now you have a guide, right? So if your kids, just for example, if their goal is advocacy, right? Then when they have an issue with their teacher, instead of jumping in and saving them and emailing the teacher, and you're really thinking about, okay, how can I get my kid to advocate for themselves? And you can say to them, hey, Bobby, your goal is to try to advocate for yourself. So what could you do here to talk to your teacher? And how could you solve this problem? What could I do to support you in solving this problem? And that's a very different approach.
Oh, interesting. I have a parent-teacher conference today. I may need to practice that.
We all do, because we all have the mother bear, we all want to jump in. When you have a plan, it allows you to mindfully meddle, to do these things in a way that when you can step back and pull your emotion out of it. I call her Amy G in the book. We have an amygdala center of the brain. I call Amy G. And when you can step back and pull her out of the picture, you really get to do things in a way that you would want to, that you would logically want to, instead of the way that you just gut react to.
Ooh, yeah. Amy G and I are going to have a talk for sure. Well, let's talk for just a moment about your writing journey.
Yes.
What was it like for you to write the book? What was your writing journey?
It's a little bit crazy for me. I mean, as I said, I wrote a bunch of blogs before, and I can actually remember, I actually have it over here. It's on a piece of construction paper. I sat down, I printed out all the blogs, and then I put them in an order. And I realized that there was kind of an order to them when I put them all together. And I grabbed a piece of construction paper and I sat out on my porch, and the kids are running around. And I just started writing an outline of kind of what the chapters would look like and how it kind of all pulled together. And it was amazing. It kind of all of a sudden came to life. It was kind of like everything had led me to the point of being able to put everything together in one way. And even throughout the whole process, doing podcasts and really talking about the concepts and I worked with a woman who kind of really helped me to talk out my ideas and get them out on paper. And it was such a growth process for me professionally and personally. And I've had this experience with teaching. When you go to teach something, you learn it so much better and you know it so much better and you know how and why you do something. And this really became that process. And so by the end of it, I was really able to succinctly explain things to families and to really be able to talk about the concepts in a way that people could grasp. And that's really my whole thing, is to really make things accessible. I want to make brain science accessible to people and really allow them to grab it and use it in everyday life, or what use is it for us? So.
Wow, very exciting. Well, guys, the book is launching today in pre-release. So just go over to Amazon, type in, Sarah Allen. You might need the keyword brains to make the book pop up. I don't want to give you the link. It's better if you go and search for it. But you guys, if you have kids, if you know people with kids, if you've ever seen a kid, you should get the book. But before I let you go, I told you this was just going to be a short little interview, but before I let you go, is there anything else that you want to share that I didn't ask about?
Yeah, I think in the book, there's also a whole section about parents themselves or people themselves. And I think that's the key to this, is really starting to model growth mindset and model these processes for your kids. And so don't forget yourselves when it comes to parenting. You really want to, I said I wanted you to feel empowered and confident as a parent. And that also goes back to you. We often lose ourselves as parents, and that is actually detrimental to our kids. And so
but me, wait, I count too. What are you talking about?
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is really about finding yourself, finding your kids, and finding yourself as a parent, and putting all those pieces together to create this wonderful family team that works together. It's not all on you as a parent. It's about raising a brain that can be independent and start to help itself. And so as you age up, the kids really should be contributing in ways, and you should be able to have a life back and have yourself as you're raising these happy brains. I work with a lot of working moms and working parents in general who need kind of this efficient and effective way of managing their home, just like they manage their work life, and being able to make sure they're attending to each piece reasonably and giving everything they have, because we all want to give everything we have to our kids, but we all have other things that we're doing as well. And we would never tell our kids, give up everything for this child, for this one thing. We want to bring everybody along. And when everybody comes along and feels a part of that team, you really create a different dynamic in your house. And it really does help. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be behaviors. That doesn't mean there's not going to be issues, but it just means that everyone can really grow from those behaviors and from those issues and become better people, yourselves as parents included.
Wow. Well, I definitely have work to do on that for sure, because you're right. I mean, I think that, once you become a mom, there's this sense of, okay, now it's all about my kid. It's not about me anymore. And I take a back seat to my children's needs.
Right.
And, with my kids being now 14 and 20, I'm like, just kind of at that point where it's like, oh, wait a second, I forgot somebody here.
Right. And, we're not saying don't attend to your kids' needs. Of course we do. And there's a lot of kids with different kinds of needs. I have a whole chapter in the book about different brains in there as well. And that's different brains in more of a typical sense as well as an atypical sense. It kind of all is on a spectrum in my mind. And I explain that in the book. So sometimes, yes, our kids' needs come first, but sometimes our needs come first, and sometimes the grandparent need come first, or sometimes a friend's needs come first. And that's kind of how it should be looked at, instead of a default in one direction or the other. And that actually teaches kids a lot. It teaches kids about, how do I manage friendships? How do I manage other relationships? How do I juggle my own life? So that when they become an adult, they can deal with that juggle, because that juggle is so hard. This is why we have so many people who build their way up in their careers and then crash, right? We don't want to crash. We want to prevent that. We want to create these connected beings, which I think is the number one thing, and these happy beings. And then maybe we want to think about what success is, and really think about, for my kid and for me as a parent, what is success? How do I define that? And once I understand those pieces, then I can really build my kids up and get there. You mentioned, putting your kids first and everything. And gosh, isn't mom guilt like such a huge
Oh my gosh.
of our thing? I just did a webinar on how mom guilt is just not a plan. And what I mean by that is, if you're driven by that mom guilt, if you feel that mom guilt and respond and react because you're feeling guilty, which we all do. I do also. I just did it. The other you're not going to give your kids the benefit, and it's not going to benefit you either. It's not going to grow anybody. It's just a reaction. And so if we feel confident and empowered and we have a plan, we reduce that mom guilt. We actually reduce behavior issues also in our kids just by nature of our connectedness with them. And again, our relationships get better with our kids, and the whole household runs a little bit more smoothly and effectively and efficiently, and all these wonderful things that we can have from this. Again, it doesn't mean things won't happen, but when they do happen, we don't need to provoke. We don't need any more help in making lives crazy. So if one thing can go a little bit more smoothly, then as things pop up, you can really manage them a little bit better.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Yeah. It's true. Like mom guilt can just be crippling. I've never been a dad, so I can't say anything about dad guilt. I imagine that, maybe dads feel guilt too, but anything with my kids, right? Like my kid doesn't sleep well. Like, oh, was it my fault? Did I do anything? Should I have raised them better? Was it because when they were 7,
Right. Exactly. Every mom goes through that. And I just actually had a mom the other day who we realized that because of that mom guilt that she was having, she was really angry at her kid because if that means it's her fault, she didn't think it was her fault, but if these things are happening, it must be her fault, right? And that creates this anger, and it makes it very difficult to then be able to help build her brain up. Once we recognize that there's that mom guilt, we can, which everybody feels and is completely normal and natural, we can put that aside and say, okay, this is my anger and frustration over here. I'm going to deal with that, but I can step forward and raise this little brain in a way that is really going to start to build them up better. And we're seeing a lot of crashes from kids, a lot more with this pandemic. Kids are having a lot more of the issues now. And I actually see the pandemic as probably the best teachable moment we could have, because instead of kids going off to college or starting to work and then crashing, they've had this big major conflict. And I talk about this in a book as a brain rule, life rule. I say conflict breeds change. And here we're getting the conflict a little earlier in our kids. And because we're getting it earlier, we get the opportunity to guide them through it because they're still under our roof. Once they get out to college and on, they really have to figure it out for themselves. So here we get this really awesome teachable moment, which is also a chapter in the book, where we can really start to look at our goals for our kids and help to build them up and help to create these independent coping and adaptive skills in them that are really going to make them thrive. I'm hoping the next generation, having dealt with this conflict, is going to be much more capable and able to handle conflict when it does come up. Maybe we'll see less of those crashes, less of those disconnected adults that feel like they really need to go and find themselves, because the hope is that maybe they've already done the process of finding themselves. Maybe they'll do this every day. And we talk about that a lot in the book. So
interesting. So I've been hearing from so many people. Obviously, there's so much controversy over the pandemic and what's happening with the schools and everything like that. And I've been hearing from so many people who are like, this is, irreparably harming our kids. These kids are going to be damaged and never come back from it. And what I hear you saying is that really there's an opportunity here, and that this might be not just a silver lining, but actually kind of an advantage in some ways.
Yeah, I talk a lot about a little bit of, I guess, about my personal background in the beginning of the book. My sister died at 29 of breast cancer. I lost 3 children. I got a divorce. I moved, and then the world shut down. These are things I learned that you can't control the things that happen to you in your life. You just can't control everything. As much as I wanted to, as much as I want to meddle and try to have everything fixed, you just can't. And the pandemic is one of those things. I remember, I don't think I went to a wedding or a funeral for that matter, until the age of like 25, something like that. I didn't know how to do death. I didn't know any of those things. And these are things that you can't control that will inevitably hit your children. And here, you're right, this pandemic, it's a great opportunity to say, okay, this is something that happened and we don't like it. Our entire world shifted. And I remember the horrible feelings that happen when you think your life is going in one direction. You think you're going to have a baby, and then all of a sudden you don't. Or you think you have the rest of your life to yell at your sister and get along with your sister and her be the aunt to your kids, and then you don't.
Wow,
Horrible feeling. And a lot of people are now experiencing something they may never have before. And would we want to save our children from these things? Absolutely. But we can't. It's an inevitability. And so if we use these things as teachable moments and show them, model for them, what do you do? How do you read the research and figure out how to think about these things? How do you make decisions when things are not concrete, they're not black and white? How do you think about the world? How do you think about what's happening? And you start to help them with those things. That's where the coping and adaptive skills are. Then if something happens, or when something happens, they have these skills to handle them. So we really need to see this as a teachable moment and not as this thing where we're crushing our children. I just don't believe that.
Wow. Well, guys, if you want to know more, the answers are in the book. You got to just go now to Amazon, put in the search, Sarah Allen Brains, and pick up a copy of the Raising Brains book. The book will be released next month, so it's on sale for only 99 cents today. Can't beat that. And wow, Sarah, this has been so amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so people can go to my website. It's brainbehaviorbridge.com. There's some free downloads also on that site that go along with the book. And then also, I'm just taking people in for this beta course now. I have the pre-sale coming on, and I have a course coming out, and I'm really going to launch that. So it's based on some of the concepts in the book, but it's actually a major extension of that and an application of that. So if you go to brainbehaviorbridge.com, you can get more information that way, or you can join the group for that course, and that's mybraingal.com.
Wow, exciting. My Brain Gal. Let's see if I can get that up there real quick. My Brain, let's see.
BAL, mybraingal.com. And I did that because people tend to call me the Brain Gal. So
I love it.
Who knows what a neuropsychologist does?
There we go, mybraingal.com. So we got mybraingal.com, Brain Behavior Bridge, and of course, head over to Amazon, run over there right now, pick up a copy of Sarah's book. You will be so happy that you did if you have ever met or seen a child. Anyways, well, I know you have a really busy day with the launch today, and I want to thank you so much for coming and chatting with us a little bit. And I cannot wait to get your book. Of course, I've already pre-ordered since I'm helping you publish it. And
the dream, it's wonderful. I'm so excited about it. I just can't wait for people to be able to see my brainchild. Someone told me it was like birthing a child. It totally is. It's like
it really is. It really is. Yeah. So I'm so excited to be, your midwife.
Thank you, Jar.
Anyways, guys, go and check out her website. Make sure you order the book, and leave questions if you've got them, and maybe Sarah will come back and chat with us again.
I'd be happy to.
Anyways, have a great day and go to Amazon now. Bye, guys.
Bye.